In the quiet forests of Russia, far from the noise of towns and the bustle of trade, saints once lived so deeply in prayer that even the natural world seemed to recognize their peace. You have already met Saint Seraphim of Sarov, whose gentle holiness became a sign of divine grace at work in human life. Today, we journey back 2 centuries to meet another forest hermit, Saint Sergius of Radonezh, the founder of Russia's most influential monastery and a spiritual father to generations of believers. Childhood and calling, 1314 to 1337. Bartholomew, later known as Saint Sergius, was born around 1314 in Rostov to devout parents, Cyril and Maria. From childhood, he loved silence and prayer, yet he struggled painfully with learning to read, a trial that humbled him and taught him to rely on God rather than talent. According to ancient tradition, an elderly monk once blessed him in the forest, after which his understanding slowly opened. His parents eventually embraced the monastic life, leaving a deep impression on their son. Even as a boy, Bartholomew often withdrew into the woods to pray alone. The quiet of the forest became his first monastery, shaping the humility, simplicity, and gentle reverence for creation that would define his life. The Forest Hermit, 1337 to 1345. As Bartholomew entered young adulthood, the call to leave worldly life grew unmistakable. Together with his brother Stepan, he withdrew into the deep forests north of Moscow, seeking a life shaped by prayer, repentance, and silence. In that wilderness, they built a small wooden cell and a simple chapel dedicated to the Holy Trinity. The forest was beautiful but severe. Winters were bitter, food was scarce, and the solitude tested both body and spirit. In time, Stepan found the isolation too harsh and returned to communal monastic life, while Bartholomew remained, embracing the hardships of the hermitage with quiet determination. There, in the stillness of the forest, he was tonsured a monk and received the name Sergius. His days were marked by prayer, fasting, and manual labor, cutting wood, tending small plots of land, and keeping long hours of silence before God. He sought no reputation, yet the peace surrounding his hidden life slowly drew travelers and villagers who came seeking counsel and prayer. According to monastic tradition, wild animals sometimes approached his hermitage without fear. These stories, preserved by his disciples, were not meant as spectacle, but as signs of the deep inner harmony that flows from a heart reconciled with God. Whether taken literally or symbolically, they express a truth cherished in Orthodox spirituality. When the human soul is at peace, creation itself becomes gentle. Monastic leadership and the Trinity Monastery. What began as a solitary hermitage slowly became a gathering place for those seeking a deeper spiritual life. Disciples came to Sergius asking to live under his guidance. Though he longed for silence, he received them with humility, forming a small brotherhood shaped by prayer, labor, and mutual service. This humble beginning became the foundation of what would later be known as the Trinity Lavra of Saint Sergius, the heart of Russian monastic life. Sergius guided the monks not through command, but by example. He worked beside them, ate simply, and insisted that no one seek privilege or honor. Under his care, the monastery became a place of prayer, hospitality, and refuge, welcoming travelers, comforting the poor, and offering peace to all who came. In times of conflict among the Russian princes, Sergius was sought as a spiritual counselor. Without wielding worldly authority, he urged reconciliation and reminded leaders that true peace begins with repentance before God. His quiet integrity shaped not only his community, but the spiritual direction of his nation. Legacy and death. Sergius departed this life in 1392 after decades of prayer, service, and quiet spiritual fatherhood. His body was laid to rest at the monastery that had grown around his hermitage, and his memory continued to shape the spiritual life of Russia. Generations of monks traced their lineage to his example of humility, obedience, and love for silence before God. Over time, the monastery became a center of learning, prayer, and renewal. Pilgrims journeyed from distant regions, seeking not only blessings, but a way of life formed by repentance and inner peace. Sergius's legacy endures as a reminder that holiness is not forged through dramatic deeds, but through daily faithfulness, the small hidden sacrifices that slowly transform the heart. Comparison with Saint Seraphim of Sarov. Sergius departed this life in 1392 after decades of prayer, service, and quiet spiritual fatherhood. His body was laid to rest at the monastery that had grown around his hermitage, and his memory continued to shape the spiritual life of Russia. Generations of monks trace their lineage to his example of humility, obedience, and love for silence before God. Over time, the monastery became a center of learning, prayer, and renewal. Pilgrims journeyed from distant regions, seeking not only blessings, but a way of life formed by repentance and inner peace. Sergius's legacy endures as a reminder that holiness is not forged through dramatic deeds, but through daily faithfulness, the small hidden sacrifices that slowly transform the heart. Centuries later, Saint Seraphim of Sarov would walk a similar path in the forests of Russia, continuing the tradition of holiness in solitude and harmony with creation. His gentle encounters with bears, deer, birds, and even wolves became signs of a soul at peace with God. Together, Sergius and Seraphim reveal a single truth. When the presence of God dwells in the human heart, it brings peace not only to people, but to all of creation. Their lives invite us to consider our own, to cultivate prayer, humility, and compassion, so that the world around us may also be touched by peace. Saint Sergius of Radonezh spent his life in prayer, humility, and quiet service, showing that true holiness is revealed not in titles or power, but in steady devotion to God. From his forest hermitage to the growth of the Trinity Monastery, his example shaped generations of monks, guided rulers toward peace and strengthened the faith of countless pilgrims. His story reminds us that a heart given to God can transform people, renew communities, and leave a legacy that endures long after one's earthly journey ends. In a world marked by noise and division, the witness of Sergius calls us back to inner peace, moral clarity, and a devotion that quietly heals the world around us. May the life of Saint Sergius inspire us to seek peace, humility, and devotion in our own lives. And if you were moved by his story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this journey of faith.